After Jua's revelation about the concept of the loop, where the world undergoes repeated destruction and rebirth, she also revealed a book that may contain answers to the past and future events of their world. Prepare to find out who the author of Fuko's favorite manga is, what vital role he plays in the story, and discover Andy's past. Let's get started. Ju has explained that the book is from Volume 30 of Yumi, the Space Soccer Club Invasion arc. She elaborated that in the story, the Space Soccer Club was about to blow up the entire school, but the captain of the Earth team used her spiral shot of justice to destroy all the goals and restore peace. She added that the rotten high school melee, which occurred in volumes 11 to 18, seemed to predict the battle with spoil. Top then inquired if she was telling the truth and further asked what this Yumi thing was. Fuko and Tatiana then shouted at Top, expressing their disbelief that Top didn't know Yumi, explaining that it's a popular manga with 101 volumes. After that, Fuko pointed out that no one knows anything beyond the manga, to which Ju has agreed. She explained that they needed to look into the status of the raw manuscript and gather intel on the author, Anan. Andy then confirmed that her idea was correct, and the way they could infiltrate the place was by creating a killer manga and bringing it to them. In the next scene, Miko escorted Andy and Fuko to a room inside their base, where Andy asked Miko to collect items from his list. Fuko was unsettled by the suggestion and protested that it was impossible, as she was merely a blissful connoisseur of fiction, not a writer. Andy then assured her that he would handle the final touches and began explaining how to create a manga. Fuko was taken aback by this revelation, so Andy elaborated that he had dabbled a little when Tezuka was popularizing manga. He declared that he would be responsible for the compositions and backgrounds, and they would depend on Fuko to envision a boyfriend who would make her heart throb, along with a corresponding scenario, as she had the most shoujo manga expertise. Fuko accepted this proposal, and afterward, Andy further explained that if Yumi truly was a book of prophecies, then its pages might contain the key to stopping Billy and his group. Andy noticed that Fuko was taking this task very seriously because she was doing it for Tatiana. Fuko acknowledged that was one reason, but added if she could excel at the manga, she believed she would gain a better understanding of her own emotions. And if she could achieve that, then she would be capable of summoning even more potent strokes of unlock. In the subsequent scene, Fuko completed her work and handed it over to Andy. Andy praised her work as exceptionally good and told the production staff to prepare, as he would finish the storyboard within an hour. Mui and Miko arrived to offer assistance, and Shin also expressed a desire to help, but Andy dismissed him. Fuko contended that creating a manga required considerable time, prompting Andy to instruct Miko to procure the equipment he had requested. She then gave Fuko a backpack with robot arms that can read her brainwaves to assist her. Unfortunately, Fuko didn't know how to control them yet, so Andy gave her an hour to get accustomed to them. Tatiana saw this and offered Fuko a tip, suggesting she should imagine looking down at herself from above, and once she got the hang of it, the rest would be a piece of cake. Fuko was glad she came to help, and meanwhile, Andy quickly finished the storyboard. In the next scene, we see Fuko, Miko, and Tatiana intensely working on the manga with the assistance of the robot arms. Juiz and Chikara then arrived and lent a hand. In the following scene, Fuko and Andy went to Shueisha headquarters to present their work. Fuko insisted on going inside alone because Andy didn't fit the image of a shoujo manga artist, and their goal was to win credibility. This humorously shocked Clothy, as he was responsible for making Andy's clothes. Afterward, Fuko proceeded to enter the building. While waiting, Fuko marveled at being there. The interviewer then arrived and noticed that Fuko was a newcomer. She reviewed Fuko's manga, titled Undead Unluck. The interviewer inquired how long it took to create, and Fuko, unsure of the usual time it takes to produce manga, answered about a week. The interviewer was surprised by this, and Fuko tearfully explained that she had said that to make a good impression. The interviewer complimented the refined composition and good character art, which pleased Fuko. However, she noted that Fuko's line work and figure drawing, unlike her composition, which was handled by Andy, were not up to par. She remarked that Fuko's art style was too old-fashioned and seemed to lack design sense, which upset Fuko. Nevertheless, the interviewer consoled her by saying that Fuko's work had a charm she could feel and that she could sense Fuko's deep affection for the hero in the story. She questioned whether Fuko had based the character on someone, but quickly withdrew her question, joking that, of course, a zombie boyfriend didn't exist. Fuko nervously agreed, adding that if such a person existed, she would surely fall for them. The interviewer then asked if Fuko wanted to submit her work to the contest, and Fuko consented. Fuko then made a request, and in the next scene, they proceeded to another floor in the building. The interviewer realized that because Fuko was a fan of Yumi, she appreciated her work on her manga. The interviewer led Fuko to the original manuscripts of Yumi. Upon discovering the manga, the interviewer was puzzled by its writing. Fuko promptly called Andy to report that the manga was written in Japanese and hadn't been altered by the language unification, indicating that Yumi was created with an artifact and suggesting it was a book of prophecy. They informed Juiz, and she said they could use that knowledge as a basis for their next course of action. Fuko was puzzled because when she reread Yumi, there was nothing suggesting Billy's betrayal or their current quests. Instead, she found awkward gaps, questioning whether the book was truly a book of prophecies. She guessed that the author might have intentionally left parts out. Fuko mentioned to the staff that she suspected Yumi had some rejected storylines. The interviewer was puzzled about how she knew that. Fuko explained that Anan had always excelled in story structure, so she noticed awkward progressions in the later parts of the story. The interviewer, surprised, confirmed Fuko was right and revealed that 3 arcs had been shelved: the Kohei's betrayal arc, the 4 Kings of the 4 Seasons arc, and Ando's past arc. Upon hearing this, Juiz quickly instructed them to contact Anan for details and reasons for withholding these arcs. She added that it was likely that Under didn't have this intel, so seizing this chance could give them an advantage. She then left the decision of adding new members to Andy. Fuko argued that they didn't know where Anan was, but she overheard the staff already in communication with him. The interviewer began to inform Anan about the change in the language of his work, but was interrupted by Fuko, who took the phone. Fuko then took out her artifact and aimed it at the interviewer while talking to Anan. She asked Anan to read her manga, offering to meet him if it was convenient. Otherwise, she would come to him. The interviewer argued that Anan doesn't usually talk to others and that she had never seen him before. Anan then responded that if it was an interesting read, he would meet Fuko at Stanley Park in Canada in 5 hours, indicating he knew she was with Andy. The interviewer was surprised, as this was the first time she had heard his voice. After that, they erased the interviewer's memories. In the next scene, Fuko and Andy were on a jet to Canada. Andy assumed Anan meant for both of them to go, indicating he knew about them. He mentioned that they could get to Canada in 5 hours using Union technology. Fuko wondered if they would really meet Anan, considering his age and sex were unknown and no one knew what he looked or sounded like. 20 years ago, he had submitted the first chapter of Yumi, which became instantly popular and was serialized. But for the past 20 years, he had only communicated with the editorial via silent phone calls and letters. Andy commented that something was clearly strange about this mysterious manga creator, piquing his interest. 5 hours later, they arrived at Stanley Park, Canada. Andy brought snacks to keep them occupied while waiting, which Fuko found delicious. He explained that it was a Canadian delicacy called poutine. While discussing their plan to confront Anan, they didn't notice someone approaching them. He took out their manga and commented that it had piqued his interest. Surprised, Andy and Fuko quickly moved away as the person commented that their manga setup needed improvement. Andy asked if he was Anan, and he confirmed, noting it was just his pen name. He then said he knew why they wanted to meet him, to understand Billy's betrayal, how to defeat the 4 Yumas, Andy's mysterious past, and how to defeat God. As he spoke, spider Yumas appeared. Anan explained that these were spawns of Autumn, its juniors, and it made sense since they were already in its territory. He quickly defeated them using his drawing skills. He explained that Andy and Fuko were about to battle Autumn, which would help them learn about themselves and become stronger. He added that these were all the hints they would get and encouraged them to find the answers themselves, confident in their abilities. He then urged them to show him an unexpected ultimate ending. After that, spider blood splattered on him, but he showed that Fuko's manuscript remained clean. During Ano-un's monologue, Andy asked Fuko if she was still a fan of his, to which she replied, "Barely." Andy quickly approached Ano-un, placing his katana to his neck, demanding him to reveal if he knows the future and, if so, why he concealed it. In a blink of an eye, Ano-un dodged and returned Fuko's manuscript to her. Andy was puzzled about whether Ano-un was a self-targeter, a voluntary type, or if an artifact enabled his escape. Fuko inquired what Ano-un meant by battle with Autumn, to which he confirmed that Autumn was indeed nearby. Hearing a scream, Fuko rushed towards it despite Ano-un's warning that neither she nor Andy were a match for it at the moment. Fuko argued it wasn't about winning or losing. Once a Yuma transforms a human, there's no reverting. Recalling a teacher who turned into a zombie, she expressed her desire to save as many people as possible, even if just one. Ano-un feigned being moved by Fuko's selflessness, calling it fitting for their heroine. Andy grabbed Ano-un, bringing him closer to the Yuma confrontation. Andy acknowledged their need for Fuko's spirit to make progress, but cautioned that without occasional training, they'd face insurmountable obstacles. They encountered an insect-like monster, identified by Ano-un as Yuma Autumn, a creature that preys on human life. Fuko found the previously screaming human transformed into a book by Autumn, who dismissed the story as boring and demanded something truly interesting. As Autumn's juniors attacked, demanding a unique story, Andy told Fuko to hold tight and use the juniors to approach Autumn. Attempting an attack, Ano-un noted it wouldn't work, urging more creativity. Andy's crimson bullet didn't affect Autumn, who retaliated, turning Andy's leg into books. While holding a scythe, Ano-un suddenly sliced his left arm off, while explaining that they are too caught up in the rules, assuming things work in a certain way too much, and they'll end up establishing more rules on their own. He then drew an arm that resembled Andy's left arm while saying that he knows it's in a negator's nature to do so, but there's no point in a negator being bound by the rules and to grow. All they need is a healthy dose of effort and a flash of inspiration. He then used Volcano Bullet in Autumn, hitting it on the face. After that, he drew a plane and invited the two to hop on. While on the plane, Andy asked Ano-un if his arm's coming back, to which Ano-un said that it's not, and he can only materialize one drawing at a time. Concerned, Fuko asked why he sacrificed his arm. Ano-un replied it was the only way to make them listen, assuring them he could still draw manga without his left hand. He then humorously declared the start of their training arc, joking about his inability to raise a left arm. While leaving the area, we see someone else in the vicinity. Not long after, they arrived at Ano-un's place and entered his workroom. Ano-un created an emblem and asked Juiz if he could train Andy and Fuko to catch Autumn. Juiz disagreed, stating she still didn't trust him and sought information about the future instead. Ano-un revealed that his strategy guide only contained bad endings, and Andy and Fuko were virtually powerless against Autumn. He believed Juiz suspected as much but needed to take a gamble for any hope of a future. Juiz mentioned they already had the necessary members and were proceeding cautiously. Ano-un countered that if they had a strong hand, they should go all in. He felt Juiz's hard work clouded her judgment. Juiz then inquired about Ano-un's gain from training them. He replied that they would achieve the best ending, free from God's control. He didn't want Juiz to squander her carefully assembled team on a mundane conclusion. Fuko approached, declaring her trust in Ano-un, citing his life-risking efforts to save them. Andy joined in, eager for training because Ano-un claimed knowledge of his past. Andy was determined to close the power gap with Victor, believing the key lay in his unknown history. Eventually, Juiz consented, making them promise to return safely and capture Autumn. Ano-un, thrilled, produced a replica of Autumn's claw, explaining it turned people into books. This implies that Fuko has the ability to connect with Andy's past, as the secret to enhancing his powers lies within his history. After accepting that he will be slashed by the claw, Ano-un did it, turning Andy into a pile of books. A huge stack of books stood tall, even making into space, shocking Fuko. Fuko asked why is it so large, so Ano-un explained that most likely because Victor's portion is included. Ano-un explained that instead of reading all that, Fuko's going inside it. When Fuko was asking how can she do that, her body slowly got transparent. She then saw her own body unconscious, So Anan said to her that there's nothing to panic over as he just used the artifact, Soul Caliber, to Fuko to pluck her soul and seal it unto the book of Andy's life. He explained that she's going inside there, and she will learn about the part of Andy unknown to her and, in turn, learn more about herself. He added that at the same time, Andy will gain a deeper understanding of her and re-examine her own past. Fuko was puzzled by this, but Anan just put her soul into the book while explaining that it means she was going to find out why Andy was born. In the next scene, Fuko found herself in a battlefield, confused and believing she was in Andy's memories. A guard confronted her, mistaking her for an escaped child, and instructed her to return. Fuko's attempts to communicate failed as Nico's necktie didn't work, and her English plea was ignored as the guard fired at her. Fortunately, another man intervened, shooting the guard. He called out for Sanders, Josh, and Red, frustrated they hadn't saved all the kids. They confirmed no knowledge of Fuko. Recognizing the man as Andy, Fuko called out his name, leaving him puzzled. Fuko then asked where they were and what year it was, to which Andy replied that they were a little ways out from Longing. Because Fuko was speaking Japanese, he thought she was from there. Relieved, Fuko commented that she knew she could count on Andy, as he could speak Japanese in that era. Andy then asked who's this Andy she had been talking about, prompting Fuko to realize that he didn't have that name yet. Josh approached them, scolding Fuko. Feeling that she had touched her hair, Fuko explained that a stroke of unluck was on the way. Soon, bird poop fell on Josh's head, leading her to think Fuko was a witch. Fuko then tried to explain the situation to earn their trust and avoid being killed. She started by mentioning things she knew about Andy, including his tattoos and body marks, and introduced herself, explaining that she knew his future. Sanders and Josh were puzzled as to why Fuko knew these things. In the next scene, they went along to talk and eat. Inside a saloon, Andy spoke to the waitress, saying they just needed food and booze, while Josh and Fuko talked about meeting some samurai. The waitress mentioned that if they liked, they had plenty of the town's famous local brew, but warned it might be too strong for outsiders. Josh, Sanders, and Red eagerly agreed they wanted it. Fuko then asked Andy what they should do. Andy explained that with the Civil War over, many places were in bad shape, so they went from place to place, taking down bad people. Josh added that the real reason they did this was because Andy had no memory of his past and was roaming the world looking for someone who might know who he was. As for the three of them, Andy had saved them, so they were now helping him. She then warned Fuko not to lie about knowing their captain, threatening her with death if she did. Andy calmed them down, explaining they wouldn't get any information if they threatened Fuko. When he asked how Fuko knew about his tattoos, she explained that in the future, he was almost always shirtless. Andy dismissed this, saying he would never do that. Fuko nervously explained that she didn't know the reason but thought it might be because living as an undead had warped his sense of values about going shirtless. She added that in the future, he used a katana and his fingers as pistols. Josh was puzzled by Andy being an undead, insisting he wasn't a zombie. Fuko then realized Andy wasn't aware of his powers yet. After that, Fuko asked Andy to let her join his crew so she could gain their trust by risking her life alongside him on his journey. She believed she could also get stronger and learn more about him this way. Andy then took out a revolver, loaded it with a single bullet, and handed it to Fuko, instructing her to point it at her head and pull the trigger. He said if she survived, he would allow her to join his crew. Without hesitation, Fuko pointed the gun at her head and pulled the trigger multiple times, prompting Josh to scold her for being reckless. Fuko pointed out that it wasn't loaded, but Andy had made it look convincing. She explained that if there was only a 1 in 6 chance, the Andy she knew would never do that to someone who wasn't a fighter. She commented that she guessed he was still the same Andy after all. After that, Josh said that even though Fuko was reckless, she liked her and vouched for her to join the team. While they were talking, Josh heard something outside, and suddenly, several men began shooting at them. The men then spoke to the saloon woman, revealing they had planned to get Andy and his crew drunk to make them an easier target and strike a deal to keep the men from bothering the children in their area. While lying down, Ms. Josh asked Fuko if their captain was doing well in the future, to which Fuko tearfully replied that he was. After hearing this, Ms. Josh passed away. Andy regenerated and borrowed Sanders' axes, then went outside. Fuko realized that learning about Andy meant understanding the many times he had to say goodbye. It was her duty to witness each one with her own eyes. In that moment, standing atop the men who killed his crew, Andy also realized something. If he wasn't going to die, he couldn't care less about the pain. After confronting the gunmen, Andy and Fuko buried the bodies of their comrades. The saloon lady approached them and said that it was her fault for following the plans of the gunmen. She said she would atone for what she had done, so Andy walked towards her. Instead of reprimanding her, Andy handed her bottles of beer, instructing her to pour them on his comrades' graves annually as a form of atonement until her death, ensuring she doesn't miss a year. This act, he explained, would absolve her in the eyes of his fallen friends. The saloon lady agreed to this condition, and Andy, now accompanied by Fuko, resumed his journey. Fuko commented on the kindness of Andy, saying that he knew that the lady would probably keep blaming herself for the death of his friends, but then he gave her a way to make amends. Andy then explained that he just wanted her to suffer, but Fuko knew that wasn't really the case. Fuko then assumed that she was now part of his crew, to which Andy explained that he was just going to drop her off at the nearest town, making Fuko argue that that wasn't part of the deal. Andy then jokingly said that if that's the case, the crew is now disbanded. From then on, Fuko traveled with Andy on his journey. They ran into and parted ways with many people in many places. But during all the time they were together, Fuko never heard from Andy about his past, nor did he ever smile. In the next scene, Fuko is talking to their new crew members, Ash and Kemu, about her unluck power. The two were curious about it, so Fuko let them experience it firsthand. After touching them, Kemu's seat suddenly broke, and a waitress tripped, making the food she was holding fall to Ash. After that, Fuko brought Andy some food outside. Andy instructed her to stop calling him by that name when his men are around, prompting Fuko to argue where's the harm in that. Fuko then told him that she gave them the unluck ritual earlier, to which Andy guessed right on what happened to the two. Fuko then opened up about Ash always staring at her chest while Kemu doesn't. She noticed Andy's drink. He said that it was the new one called Budweiser, to which Fuko commented that then Josh and the others must be drinking it around now too. After that, Andy asked her what does she think it means to die because he personally thinks it's when your brain stops thinking. He explained that thinking means you can challenge, you can change. So he thinks when a person can't do that anymore, that's when they're dead. Fuko commented that she doesn't quite agree with that, and in her opinion, you only truly die when people stop remembering you. She told her story to Andy about how she lost her parents. She shared her belief that death truly occurs when one is forgotten, recounting how her parents' memory continues to support her, suggesting they live on within her. Andy smiled, agreeing to what she said, and because of that, a ray of light filled Fuko's face as she saw Andy finally smile. Andy then held Fuko's hand while explaining that his oldest memory is April 15, 1865, Washington, D.C. He then said that now that he told Fuko, she's going to go there, right? Andy tried to kiss Fuko while saying that so long as he doesn't forget, he won't ever be alone. Fuko stopped his attempt and explained that the one she loves is him, but not him at the same time, so she doesn't think they should be doing that right now. Fuko then realized what she said and asked did she just say that she loves Andy, to which Andy agreed and pointed out that she's also starting to fade away. Fuko was puzzled if she's going someplace else now. Before fully fading away, Fuko informed Andy that 144 years from now, on August 1, 2020, they will meet at Shinjuku Station, and she'll try to run away from him, but he should make sure he catches her. She said that she'll kiss him on that day, so he should be sure not to forget. Andy repeated Fuko's words about her opinion on what it means to die, and commented that it sure is wicked sick. Anan explained that right now, Andy is experiencing a second life. A hypothetical one where he first met Fuko long ago. This won't alter his actual life, but the memories of what if will remain with him all the same, and that will make his heart stronger. It was revealed that some members of Under arrived, which is why he's explaining that, and added that if they interrupt, he'll have to kill them. In the next scene, we go to Fuko, and she was teleported into another memory of Andy. Victor suddenly appeared, declaring the memories from this point forward as his own and ordering Fuko to leave. Fuko resisted, arguing the importance of understanding Andy's part in these memories for their shared future. When Fuko threatened Victor with a revolver, he effortlessly disarmed her and aimed a finger bullet at her, warning that Andy would be weakened by her death. Victor saw an opportunity to gain control and advised Fuko to escape while she could, hinting at the inevitable confrontation between them. After getting shot, Fuko went back to the time where she met past Andy, puzzling her. Victor was there again and killed her in that memory. She then went back to a later point in time again, and there was Victor again. He explained that Andy's memory has events logged until December 2020, so he's going to keep killing Fuko until he can snuff out her soul while it's still in the book. He then said, "Curse your misfortune for ever meeting him, Unluck." Fuko then died again and was transported to Shinjuku. Fuko asked a man what the year and month it was now, and when she was informed that it was 2020, August, she quickly ran while thinking that if what Victor said is true, then that is her only chance to help Andy. She cried while thinking that she can't afford to die as she still haven't given him anything in return. Fuko shouted Andy's name, hoping to find him, while Victor, atop one of the buildings, decided to kill everyone in his path so he wouldn't need to find Fuko. He then used dead line, and thick strips of his blood started to gush out of his fingers, making huge whips that he uses to destroy a big part of the city. His blood manages to slice through all of the buildings and bridges in its path, hinting how really strong Victor is. At first, Victor thought he succeeded in killing Fuko, but not long after, it was revealed that Andy came just in time to save her. He quickly used 10 twist vortex bullet on Victor. Victor underestimated Andy's attack, even calling it insignificant, but to his surprise, it penetrated his defense, shocking him. Fuko cried in Andy's arms, hinting at her relief at finding him. Fuko cried and cried, so Andy commented that she had turned into a big crybaby. He then instructed her to just hold on tight while he fought with Victor. This was the first time Andy saw his main personality. Andy asked Victor why he was targeting Fuko, so Victor explained that she was trying to sneak peeks into his past, meaning she seemed rather eager to die. He added that this trespassing played to his favor because there was someone he needed to kill once he got out. He then explained that Fuko wasn't part of the book, so killing her a few more times would extinguish her soul, and since the Andy on the outside was so dependent on her, he could use his moment of weakness to assume control. So, in short, killing Fuko was his ticket to the outside. Andy explained that he didn't know how he on the outside thought of Fuko, but she knows that the guy she sees here, the current him, had changed, and it's thanks to her. He added that that goes for his takes on death, his hopes for the future, and others, and that's why she sees him there. The current him, that is. He said confidently that he was going to deliver her to him in the real world as Fuko was someone he needed, and he would defend her to the end. After that, Victor started to get ready to attack. He used Dead Vulcan and started barraging Andy and Fuko with blood bullets. Andy used his repair glide to move fast and evade Victor's attacks. Victor noticed that Andy's movements were dramatically smoother compared to his past moves. Andy then quickly rushed to Victor's side and they both used Dead Blade, making an intense clash of techniques. Victor commented that Andy had mastered solidifying his blood too. Victor also noticed that Andy was boosting his speed by spraying blood from his joints, pointing out how meeting Fuko had improved him that much. Both Andy and Victor launched simultaneous attacks, but Victor's strength surpassed Andy's proficiency, sharpness, density, and power of the blade, allowing him to break it. Andy managed to dodge Victor's deadline attack, but was still knocked back by its force. Victor commented that the fight was a waste of time and followed up with another attack, Dead Road. Andy attempted to counter again, but Victor's version was significantly stronger. Victor acknowledged that Andy had learned impressive skills in just 200 years, but if that was all he could muster with his two arms, he was no match. Andy then told Fuko to let go of him, revealing he had a plan. Initially resistant, Fuko was persuaded by Andy's assurance that his narrow-minded views on life and death changed thanks to her. He instructed Fuko to leave and relay a message to the Andy outside, confident that enough unluck had been charged to handle Victor himself. As he explained, Andy received a kiss on the cheek from Fuko. After that, Fuko ran as fast as she could while cheering for Andy, who had a plan using the charged unluck he got from Fuko, calling the attack, Unluck bullet. Victor realized that a large stroke of unluck was coming soon, so he contemplated blowing up Andy. Andy finally used Unluck bullet, and 4 of his fingers started flying towards Victor. At first, Victor thought that his attacks were just random, but they started to move as if they were controlled, surprising him. The first index finger landed on his abdomen, but it didn't pierce him, so he didn't think much of it. Unfortunately for him, a sudden gas explosion occurred, blowing up his side, courtesy of Fuko's unluck. He was puzzled as to why it was befalling him instead of Andy. While attacking using Dead Blade, Andy explained to him that he had loaded his soul into his finger. This surprised Victor, and he thought that it was impossible for a stroke of unluck to be packed in only his finger and that it should only affect his main body. After the second middle finger landed, a train suddenly appeared and hit them both. Fuko was surprised by this. While their heads were still in the air, Andy explained to Victor that he would always start repairing himself from his head because he figured you need your brain to live, and if you can't think, you're basically dead. Victor then commented, saying that it's a worthless perception, to which Andy explained that that's why he had changed. Surprising Victor again, Andy repaired himself from his torso, managing to land a solid hit to Victor's face using 3 twists. Andy then explained that when he met Fuko and journeyed with her, he learned to stop letting some crummy logic dictate his life, and instead learned that he could live in that world however he well pleased. He then pointed out that unluck dwells in the soul, and souls are what give people life. He added that that's the kind of world he believes in, so it doesn't matter how his body gets destroyed as he can come back from any part of it. This triggered a flashback of Victor's past where he was asked by Jewiz if he believed in reincarnation, a phenomenon when the soul lives for a long time and you get reborn in a new body when you die. Victor said that he doesn't believe in that, and he also doesn't believe in souls because for him, people live because blood pumps to their brains. Jewiz then said that he should believe because it's way better that way, because if that's true, she'd get to see him again even if she does die one day and wind up in a new body. She'll never forget him. In this time, Andy thanked Victor for embodying the idea that it's all a matter of how they perceive the rules. So long as they believe in that concept, their abilities will develop as much as they want. He then made a bold statement saying that they, negators, can get even stronger. The third finger landed on Victor, and suddenly, a huge Union plane crashed onto him. Fuko noticed that no matter how much they beat him, he would just come back. The fourth finger also landed, and a sphere came bouncing off of the plane, and Fuko noticed that that thing was what they used when they caught Andy. While looking at the two, Victor realized something, and at this time, he understood what Jewiz said about how much of an impact Fuko and Andy have on their mission. Fuko and Andy placed Victor's head inside the sphere. Andy mentioned that normally no one could escape from it, but Victor was an exception and likely to break out quickly. Andy asked Fuko if she had reached 1865, and Fuko explained that Victor had driven her away. While Andy was urging her to leave, Fuko expressed her desire to talk to Victor because she wanted to learn more about Andy. Since Victor was part of Andy, she believed understanding Victor would also mean understanding Andy better. She reasoned that having a conversation with him might be more enlightening than merely sneaking peeks at his past. Andy then told Victor to exit the sphere, noting that he was capable of breaking out anyway. Victor escaped the sphere, unveiling his formidable Excalibur to Fuko, which surprised her. Fuko then punched his sword of greatness, making Victor fall to his knees. Andy remarked that Fuko should be accustomed to such occurrences by now, but Fuko insisted she would never get used to seeing anything like that. Fuko was astonished to learn that Victor could make clothes without clothing. Victor explained that as a soul sealed off by his counterpart, and with Fuko being a soul from the outside, creating a familiar outfit was as simple as imagining it. He mentioned that this principle applied to her clothes as well, being a manifestation of her current thoughts. Following this, Fuko inquired about Victor's relationship with Jewiz. She shared that her initial impression of him was negative due to his conflict with the Union members. However, her perspective changed upon seeing Victor and Jewiz collaborating to establish their organization. Victor remarked that Apocalypse had shown Fuko things she was not supposed to see. Fuko questioned the authenticity of those memories and why Victor would want to disrupt their plans if he himself was a Roundtable member. Victor noted Fuko's similarity to Jewiz, which made Fuko blush and inquire about the similarities between her and Jewess. Victor pointed out that while Fuko lacked conventional attributes such as class or sex appeal, and even had a raccoon dog face with big eyes, she possessed a fearless spirit when it came to aiding those she cares about, willing to risk everything for them. Victor emphasized that it was Fuko's spirit and soul that mirrored Jewess, highlighting her courage and dedication. Victor remarked that seeing Fuko and Andy together reminded him of past experiences. He recounted how initially their efforts seemed promising, with each quest bringing them closer to their goal. However, they soon faced the harsh reality that no matter the effort or the passage of years, victory remained elusive, as if they were merely pawns in a greater scheme. Despite this, their resolve didn't wane. They believed that through perseverance and the right strategy, they could eventually prevail. This led to a relentless cycle of attempts by boarding the Ark and enduring countless loops in pursuit of their elusive goal. Victor criticized Jewess's refusal to accept her fate, labeling her efforts as futile. He believed the merciful solution was to end her suffering, a decision driven by the pain of watching a loved one struggle indefinitely. Fuko's inquiry into Victor's motives revealed his inner conflict. Victor's change of heart was sparked by the realization that witnessing Fuko's determination and their shared evolution of unluck signified a transformative moment. This evolution, particularly their ability to summon a tool tailored to their needs, highlighted their growing mastery over their fate. Victor acknowledged that their journey together had enriched their understanding, suggesting that with continued exploration and understanding, their abilities could potentially alter the course of their battle. Convinced of their progress, Victor decided to cease his interference. When Fuko questioned the past, Victor advised focusing on the future, hinting that answers lay with Jewess. He then mentioned she could leave by kissing Andy and focusing her unluck. The kiss, filled with intention and emotion, led to Andy offering Fuko reassurance and encouragement, emphasizing the importance of remembering their shared experiences. While Fuko was getting out of Andy's memory, Andy explained that he's going to be one with him on the outside and she'll be even better equipped to woo her over, so she should get ready. Concluding their interaction with optimism for the journey ahead, Fuko affirmed her readiness to see him in the here and now. In the next scene, it was explained that Akiruno was raised by a single mother. A peculiar child, she always read manga to him before bedtime. But soon, the situation reversed, and he was the one telling his mom stories from his imagination. He created stories and enjoyed bringing a smile to his mother's face. After that, we go to the scene where Rip has arrived at Anan's house, and it turns out they also found out about his book of prophecies. Anan did not want them to know about it, so Rip wondered what he would gain from saving Andy and Fuko. Anan then said that he was mistaken. Before long, Rip attacked with his artifact. Anan tried to block it, but it still penetrated and sliced his right hand. Suddenly, there was a flashback continuing the story of Akiruno. One day, he found an artifact in an alley. It was the G-Liner, and the first to touch it could see the past and future events of the current loop in its entirety. At that point, all memories of that loop went into Akira's brain. He was so amazed about the things he saw in his mind, so he hurriedly went back home. While running, he suddenly passed through a man, which surprised him. It was explained that when he obtained it, he became a negator. Upon returning home, Akira immediately began drawing the events he saw, excited to show them to his mom. He heard his mom downstairs, so he quickly went to her. However, when he was about to show his works, he just passed through her, and it seemed like she couldn't see him. He had obtained a compulsory activation type negator, where his speech, conduct, or any attempt to be seen was completely undetected by any living being. No matter how much he screamed or tried to touch, no one could notice him. While his mom searched and cried, all he could do was sit beside her even though she couldn't feel him. When he heard his mom's prayer wishing for his happiness and that he could continue his favorite manga, he just cried out of sheer sadness. That's when he realized he was a negator and that his ability would not disappear until he died. Because of the characters he loved and the vision he saw, Andy and Fuko, he did not run from his ability but fought as hard as he could. At first, he was hesitant, but because of them, he decided to use his ability to fulfill his mom's wish and to let her know the courage of the people who taught him that lesson. He practiced and created a one-shot manga that he submitted, Initially, he thought of using the story of Andy and Fuko, but he preferred to use his own story, and thus To You From Me. A typical young romance manga was created. He also came up with his pen name Anan. In the next scene, he learned from a magazine that his one-shot manga had won. The editorial department asked for his information because they planned to serialize his work. Overjoyed that he could share what he knew with everyone, he cried. As long as he did not connect it to himself, he could show his most beloved manga to humanity. He answered Rip and said that Andy and Fuko were the reason why he was alive, so that was why he would save them. Suddenly, Rip was speaking to someone who seemed to have reached their limit. He remarked that by killing Fuko, he could gain a higher position than Rip, expressing his frustration with following the person who had slashed his stomach, suggesting this might be unseen. We return to Un's past, where he explains that sometime after his work was serialized, he recalled the memories and questioned the reality of Andy and Fuko's story. He remembered that in August of this year, Andy was set to go to Japan to study quick-draw techniques, so he decided to seize that opportunity to verify if the memories he was seeing were indeed real. While walking, a tree suddenly fell, and there he saw Andy practicing the Gekka Moonlight-style quick-draw/waxing moon. He could hardly believe that Andy was right in front of him. In his excitement, he momentarily forgot that he could only pass through people. Andy decided to leave, bidding farewell to Yusai, but Yusai attempted to engage him in conversation, requesting that he continue training, suggesting that his deceased father would be pleased if he provided an heir to continue their legacy. Andy consented, which angered Akira because he knew Andy was with Fuko. However, that changed when Andy mentioned that would only happen if Yusai outlived him. This reminded him that negators always suffer. Everything he saw elicited the same feelings. Despite the hardships imposed on them by their negation powers, they continued to fight against God. However, if his memories were accurate, he knew they would be defeated if they lose Andy at Fuko. He resolved not to let that happen. He was the only one aware of this fact, realizing that fate was mocking him. He thought of using his manga as a message and guide for the heroes of his story. With the pseudonym Anan, he could share his work with the world, a loophole in the rules. If he could use that, he might include details about the future, but to foster growth in his characters, he sought alternative methods to not simply hand them this information. It was revealed that he concealed the 3 arcs as part of his plan to offer hints to Andy and Fuko. His top priority was the autumn battle, which he decided to focus on. To accomplish this, he went to the Union Library and collected all the necessary materials. Knowing that others were making efforts, he, too, as a negator, wanted to assist them. We return to the conflict between Rip and X-Day, the day it all happened. December 5th, 2020. Immediately after Andy reverted to human form, he was instructed to use the deadline. Knowing that Unseen was about to attempt to kill Fuko, he acted accordingly. Andy slashed the surroundings, but Rip and another accomplice managed to evade. It was explained that in the future Akiruno foresaw, during the battle with Autumn, in the absence of Anan, Unseen's invisible deadly blade struck and killed Fuko. But now, he was able to prevent that from happening through his efforts. Anan remarked that this was the end of what he knew, and the beginning of a story he would not witness unfolding. In the next scene, we were introduced to Sean Datz or Unseen, a self-targeting compulsory activation type. He was a member of a Brazilian gang, and in the midst of committing a robbery, he was caught by Rip and forced to join them. When he closes his eyes, he can render anything he thinks of as his own to become unseeable to others' eyes. Initially, he was unable to see his surroundings while his power was active, but after a third eye was grafted onto him, that weakness was eliminated. Rip commented that he thought they had found a way, but Sean became too complacent in being unseen, so he didn't react quickly to Andy's white attack. Soon after, Fuko returned to her body and saw what happened, which nearly made her vomit. Andy explained that the man with his body split was Unseen, the man captured by Under, and he was sure that Unseen had planned to kill him, and if Anan hadn't spoken up, the situation could have been worse, so she shouldn't think about it. Just like what was taught in the book. After that, Fuko regained her courage and prepared herself. Anan commented that it was time to get back at Autumn. Suddenly, Rip and his group charged, ordering Bax to focus on Fuko. Fuko decided to just hold Bunny, and when it came to the exchange, Fuko managed to slap Bunny, but Bunny also managed to grab Fuko's artifact. Gradually, Fuko's artifact moved inside Bunny's clothes, and soon, the ground she was standing on was destroyed due to unluck. Rip commented that it seemed too early for Bunny as well, and it seemed better for him to handle things alone. Fuko then proposed a plan, asking why don't they work together to capture Autumn since they are all negators and isn't their goal to kill God. While explaining, Rip contradicted her, saying that was their boss's goal. But for the other members, their goals varied. For him and Latla, what they wanted was the arc supposedly with Juiz. He explained that although their goals differ, if their interests align, and only if they align, would they come together to help each other. That's how Under operates. If they could provide information about that, they could cooperate, but if not, they were just obstacles and could die. Fuko questioned why Rip was so fixated on the arc, and Anan also commented that they should give up on that plan because neither Rip nor Latla could use the arc. He added that Rip had more to lose by doing that. A flashback showed Rip and Latla blaming themselves for the death of Latla's sister. They both are taking the blame, saying that they shouldn't have done what they did. After that, Rip contradicted and said that Layla's life was reparable, which is why he would use the arc to redo things, and for her, he was willing to risk everything. While explaining that he didn't care if he lost both legs for life or if others lost their lives, Latla shouted that she felt the same way. Rip shouldn't take on everything alone, and if what they were doing was to save his sister, she would also do everything to make that happen. She informed them that Autumn was on his way to them and asked what their plan was for that. Autumn had reached Anon's house, and immediately, Andy, Fuko, Rip, and Bunny jumped out to confront this giant monster. Now that Anan has managed to strengthen Andy and Fuko, reconcile with Victor, and stop Unseen's assassination, only one thing remains: defeating Autumn. Andy explained that the reason it seemed to grow larger is that it was in the midst of its phases and continued to consume humans while they were inside the book. They wondered how to attack it since they were unable to even scratch it initially. But now, using their newly acquired powers, Andy tried to attack again. He used Repair Boost, Bloody Enchant Deep Crimson Crescent Moon. Andy managed to slice Autumn's face. However, after that, the cut quickly regenerated, surprising both Andy and Fuko. Rip joined in, saying that if so, it was time for Unrepair to show its strength. He tried to slash it, but it didn't even wound Autumn. Autumn countered, but due to Latla's negator power, it didn't hit her or Rip, and Andy uses his dead blade to cut the attacks. Anan then shouted, grabbing their attention. He explained that he would draw the most powerful artifact he knew to use to capture Autumn, so he asked them to give him time because if it succeeded, he guaranteed that they would capture Autumn. Andy and Fuko agreed, while Rip confirmed with Latla if this was true, to which she answered yes. If so, they decided to wait while Andy and others engaged Autumn. In the next scene, Anan explained that he had a strange life filled with loneliness and sadness, and in the end, he couldn't convey his message to his mother. While Andy, Fuko, and Rip were fighting, he introduced them to his mother in heaven. He enthusiastically described each of their characteristics to her. Before long, Anan finished drawing the artifact he referred to. He targeted it at Rip, saying the words, age, Rip, 15 years. The beam hit Rip, and his body returned to normal. Rip realized that Anan used the time control artifact that Fong had used on him. Rip became angry, saying that using it would take the amount of time manipulated and age the person 10 times that amount. Rip immediately went to Anan, saying there was still time to reverse what he had done, but Anan told him not to worry and that he would just return to being alone. He explained that Rip's powers were crucial to defeat Autumn. He also said he was happy to have seen and spoken with them. After that, he said that now, his cast of cool heroes would take care of what remained to be done. While talking, Anan's body completely disappeared in front of them. As Fuko stared at the scene, we were taken to a flashback where she was being scolded by a mother, blaming her for her child's injury. Fuko's grandfather explained that his granddaughter hadn't done anything, but the mother continued to accuse her of doing something wrong. In the next scene, while talking, Fuko saw a manga, so her grandfather explained that it was her mother's favorite manga. She asked if she could read it, to which he agreed. Upon looking at it, she was captivated by the pictures. It was explained that after the death of her parents and grandfather, and after suffering much misery, The only thing that kept her from ending it all was this manga. Fuko couldn't believe what she saw, but they weren't done fighting Autumn, so she needed to refocus. As Autumn was being attacked, Andy thought about how its regeneration was too fast, wondering how to attack it. Rip called to him, asking who Anan was, why he disappeared, and why he was returned to normal. He assumed that Anan did it to help them and to change his heart. When he said it wouldn't happen, Fuko explained that Anan called them heroes, used me to guide them, gave them a chance to go to the past to become stronger, and reverted Rip because all of that was necessary to defeat Autumn. Bunny asked Latla why Rip wasn't happy even though his body was returned. So Latla explained that Rip wanted to be a bad person because otherwise, he wouldn't reach his desired destination. Being a hero meant he had to give up on Layla. While explaining, Andy suddenly instructed them and gave them an idea on how to defeat Autumn. Latla was irritated by his casual calling. Bunny immediately followed, and Rip complained about why he was calling the shots. Andy then stated that he was telling them they could defeat Autumn. Rip was speechless, and then Latla heard something from the side. Suddenly, a multitude of Autumn's juniors emerged, making Latla's skin crawl. Autumn transformed into Phase 2, surprising Andy and the others. As it attacked, the monster commented that they would make a good book, especially Andy. While watching them, Andy, an idea suddenly came to Rip. He remembered Layla's words about helping her and calling him a hero. This motivated him to start cooperating with Andy. They executed Andy's plan, and Autumn couldn't regenerate. Rip then asked Latla if they could defeat it together, to which Latla confidently said there was no doubt they would win, indicating they were sure to succeed. In the next scene, the tale of a guiding force for a cast of heroes was explained. The tale of a single boy. This story begins with a boy fond of manga, who found a mysterious pin that showed him the past and future. The boy tried to tell his mother about his visions of the past and future, but despite his best efforts, his voice was not heard. This was due to him being the unknown negator. While the narrator is telling the boy's story, our group of friends continued their battle with Autumn. Unnoticed by anyone, he lived alone. Yet despite this, he did not give up on life, partly because of his mother's wish for him to stay alive. But another reason was thanks to what he saw that day. A group of people struggling with their bitter pasts. A group of heroes. That day, the boy realized that by drawing them as an author, under the alias Anan, he could share his stories with the world. As the narrator continued the story, Andy instructed Fuko to give him bad luck. As the story went on, the boy soon realized that the group of heroes he saw was not fiction but all real. The boy was alarmed by this fact, because in a vision of the future, Unseen killed Fuko, and the world ended. He needed to change that future, so he decided to be brave and risk his life and limb to repay the hero's kindness. Using information about the future spread throughout his manga, he revealed his existence. He used the manifestation ability of his pin, creating another version of himself named Anan to communicate with Andy and Fuko. This prevented Fuko's death, strengthened Andy and Fuko, returned Rip to normal, and prepared them to defeat Autumn. Andy used Deep Crimson Waxing Moon, while Rip used Full Moonsault. Latla and the others followed up on the wounds inflicted on Autumn by the two. Autumn's core was exposed due to Andy and Rip's attack, giving Latla and the others the opportunity to take it. Autumn tried to prevent Latla from reaching his core, but due to her negator ability, he couldn't hit her. Perhaps the boy's sacrifice was necessary to change the future, but soon after, the pin crumbled into pieces. He would never be able to draw another double because of that, returning him to being alone again. Yet, the boy had no regrets, because he had said everything he needed to say. Andy used the move he learned from Anan, the Volcano Unluck bullet, and it hit Autumn's core. Fuko shouted to just believe because they had all the pieces given by Anan and all the unluck they needed. Before long, they captured Autumn's core and managed to finish their mission. As Akira's story continued, he knew he would not be seen again. But even if no one could physically see him, as long as there were people who remembered him, would they assume he was dead? No, they would think he was right beside them. That was the belief Andy chose to hold on to. And that is a story of a guiding force for a cast of heroes. A story of a lone hero. And that is to you from me. Subscribe for more videos.